It's the All Things Strange podcast. We are your hosts, Agent Anderson and
Agent Ether.
Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can find all of our wonderful links in the description on the Linktree, where you can find our Patreon, our Discord, our merchandise, and more. This week's episode, the Malmstrom Base UFO sighting. All right, this topic was voted upon by our Patreon subscribers. We've got two wonderful tiers for you. The first tier, coming in at a paltry $3, will get you all of our bonus content, early access, and after hours. And the second tier will get you the ability to vote on upcoming topics such as this one.
And how much is the second tier?
$5.
What a deal.
Best deal in podcasting,
And there
baby.
is a lot of bonus material.
Yeah, if you include after hours as bonus material, I'd have to double check, but there's well over 100, 150, something like that. I'd have to look.
And the best part is there's a lot of other agents in the after hours and
sometimes
bonus material. Well, I know I've shown up in quite a number of bonus episodes because I thought they were regular episodes, and then Agent Anderson would be like, "Oh no, it's a bonus episode."
It depends on if you go back far enough, sure. more recently, it's just been me on the bonus episodes. But our most recent bonus episode was part 2 of biological weapons testing. It turns out that the government, the United States government and other governments may or may not have tested biological weapons, chemicals, and all sorts of nasty stuff on the unwitting population. So that was part 2 of that one last time. And the episode before that was, I was talking about the handbook by the police chiefs. I forget the exact organization, but it's an organization of police executives made a UFO handbook to hand out to police officers. This happened fairly recently, and it was fascinating. So I did a bonus episode on that.
And shout out, I think it was my sister who pointed it out to me, and I gave it to you.
Yeah.
Initially. So shout out to her.
Agent South Carolina.
She's actually in North Carolina. We're going to South Carolina for vacation for this big family reunion thing.
Agent North Carolina.
I'm not calling her Agent North Carolina. You are silly.
Now I have to look up how many bonus thingamajigs I have. It's right here. I just have to click on something.
She'd probably like Cat. I'm going to call her Agent Cat.
Agent Cat. Oh yeah, that's true. She probably would like that.
Yes, she would.
All right, so I just went and checked on the Patreon, and I have 143 things tagged as bonus. That includes after hours and bonus episodes. That's basically everything not on the regular feed. I have the regular feed mirrored on there because it's also ad-free if I ever start doing ads. We're not doing ads right now. I did them in the past, and I decided not to do them for now.
The days of the ads.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was thinking about that the other day when I was driving on my long super commute.
You were so enthusiastic.
I'm just so bad. I was listening to some radio talk show hosts who I won't, advertise for, but they were good and they were doing ads. And I'm like, I could not do that for a living. I can't even do that for our podcast. I would be a terrible actress.
My favorite ads, host read ads, are Bill Burr.
Yeah.
He has a podcast, the Monday Morning Podcast. He's so hilarious when he reads them sometimes that I actually look forward to his ads. The guy is pretty funny. Anyways, let's get to the Malmstrom Air Force Base UFO Encounter. I always think of it as Maelstrom, kind of like a storm, but
oh, right.
It's in my head. That's what it is, but it's not spelled that way. It's M-A-L-M, Malmstrom.
Now, in Agent Anderson actually told me about this topic. I haven't been on in quite some time because reasons.
Yeah, because I tell her, what are you doing? Oh, we're doing some cryptids. And she says, Psh, cryptids.
I believe the correct...
That's dumb. I don't want to do cryptids.
I usually say, oh, I have so much work to do. And then I have to go to the gym and life. But this one, I really wanted to come on the show. I wanted to talk about this topic.
No, the Yucca Man. That's what it was. You didn't seem too enthusiastic about the Yucca Man.
That is a true story. I was not enthusiastic about that cryptid.
But we used to live in San Bernardino County.
What is it, Joshua Tree?
Yeah.
Lovely area.
We could have had the Yucca Man beating down our window at any moment.
This reminds me of a story, but I'll save it for after
Maybe
hours.
we should save the banter for after hours.
Let us save banter and move forward.
Let's get back to the podcast here. People are going to start tuning out.
I don't think so. I'm awesome.
Oh yeah, you're really entertaining. Yeah, me too. That's why I'm so famous. All right. So anyways, I thought like this one, Malmstrom UFO or Malmstrom Air Force Base, to me always sounds like something from a video game, but it's not. It's just an Air Force base. It's in Cascade County, Montana, fairly close to the Canadian, not super close, but it's, not that far from the Canadian border.
Ooh, it must get cold in the winter.
Oh yeah. But I'm saying that if you live in Montana, you're probably going to say, you don't know what you're talking about. It's nowhere near the border. But no, I mean that more for listeners who are not possibly from the United States and might not remember their geography from when they were kids, even if they are from the US. So yeah, it's up there by the border. There's a reason for that. Maybe we'll get to later. And it's named after a guy, not a storm, Colonel Einar Axel Malmstrom, who sounds like a German dude, but he wasn't. He was a soldier and or a pilot actually, and he was shot down and captured by Germany, and he was a POW during World War II. But that is a whole other story. His story, I read through briefly his story. It's really interesting. I mean, I hope they make a movie about his life someday because pretty interesting story. Anyways, Malmstrom Air Force Base, named after the POW guy, not the storm, Cascade County, Montana. It was built in 1942, and it's also where the 341st Missile Wing and Air Force Global Strike Command live. So it's a pretty important base. I mean, the Air Force Global Strike Command, I won't go into what they do, but they're a pretty important organization within the military. The 341st Missile Wing is an ICBM missile unit, intercontinental ballistic missile. And they used to have long-range B-47 Stratojets there at the base, but those were retired and the nuke silos were installed.
I don't even like to think about this topic.
It's pretty scary.
Right, all these. And this is way back when. We're talking about, what, 67?
Oh, no. The base was opened in 42, but it was, at first when it was opened, it wasn't used for nuclear stuff. It was actually used in part of a transfer chain. We actually gave a crap ton of military equipment to Russia in World War II so they could fight the Germans. And this was one of the launching points where we moved equipment through this base. But that's a whole other story. Really interesting history to this base if you're interested in that kind of stuff. The 341st Missile Wing housed that stuff. These days they have LGM-30 Minuteman III missiles at the base. And those missiles weigh 80,000 pounds. They're 60 feet long. And can you guess the range, Agent Ether?
4,000 miles.
No, 8,700 miles range, which you could launch those from, the northern United States and hit a lot of targets in Europe and Russia and, that part of the world. I don't know exactly how many targets, but it's pretty shocking how far they can send those things. 700-mile ceiling, which is definitely into outer space. They have a max speed of Mach 23 and an accuracy of 200 meters. This particular version of the Minuteman was deployed in 1970. So that's that level of technology, a missile that can go Mach 23 and travel 8,700 miles. That's what they had in the 70s. That's pretty scary. Like it's really frightening to think about only imagine the capabilities that they have these days, right? And I imagine the only reason they still have those missiles at the base is sort of just like as a distraction. Like, yeah, go ahead, bomb this location. It's right here. Go ahead. So there are supposedly 3 bases left in the United States that maintain the Minuteman III missiles. And the Malmstrom 341st Missile Wing is one of those 3. So there's a lot more we could talk about for Malmstrom Air Force Base, the hardware that's gone through there, the airplanes, and all this interesting stuff. But let's get to the good stuff, the UFOs. All right, Agent Ether, would you like to get to Robert Salas?
Oh, you want me to get right to it?
Get right to it. Well, haven't we spent enough time?
Oh, we've spent more than enough time.
Enough time beating around the bush?
Well, quite recently, Robert Salas came out as a witness to events. He had signed under much duress a non-disclosure agreement along with other personnel saying he wouldn't talk about any of these events to family, friends, news people, anyone.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I read through several articles, lots of sources, and I even listened to a couple of podcasts just to see what they thought about it. And it's not mentioned very many places, but Robert Salas himself said in an interview that they basically told him he wasn't allowed to talk about it, which is not unusual for a classified event.
But he had to sign something.
Right.
He actually signed a non-disclosure agreement, and he was nervous about bringing it up. And he said normally after an event like this or any kind of failure, they would come back and they would debrief them at some further point in time. And he said one of the things that struck him as odd was after this entire event, that was it. It was case closed.
Yeah, that's really weird.
Yeah, he said it was very unusual for the type of experience. He was 26 at the time. This is in March of 1967. The event itself was on March 16th.
Yeah, that's what I have as well.
Yeah, he was 26. He was on duty. He was in command at control. He could attest to the fact that he was monitoring 10 ICBMs and that at some point they would become inoperable. And then he knew of a similar incident 8 days prior at another launch control facility. And that's where we'll kind of start. So we have this situation where the ICBMs go offline or they're a no-go in technical terms. No-go.
Yeah.
And he was witness to that. Now, he was not a direct witness. A lot of what I'm going to tell you about are secondhand accounts that I could find. But interestingly enough, if you go on YouTube or you look anywhere online, there are a ton of interviews from this guy because what happened was this information became declassified. The documents and, surrounding facts became a FOIA request, and he was allowed to talk about it after that.
So wait, let me ask you something. I have 2 events at Malmstrom Air Force Base, both on March 16th. I have one on Echo Flight, and I have another one at Oscar Flight. Oscar Flight is the one that Salas was involved in. Now, I have both of those happened on March 16th. You said there was another one?
My understanding is that one happened on March 24th.
That one of them happened, okay.
So that they were 8 days apart. That's what I have in my note.
Huh, I didn't see that. Okay, so I must have, I don't know. There's a discrepancy there.
There is a discrepancy, which is not unusual.
Especially for something that happened so long ago.
Yeah, that's very true. Although I think he might still be with us.
Yeah, but this is another case that is not well documented because it's still mostly classified.
So on Tuesday, October 19th of 2021, so quite recently, I found a press interview with a number of military personnel, including Robert Salas. Now, a lot of the events they talked about were not related to the Malmstrom incident. So although I listened to it, I didn't take a lot of notes on it. So here are some excerpts from that conference. And I'm going to kind of sum up and then also directly quote what he said. So Salas said, "We're witness of a UFO phenomena with respect to nuclear weapons." And he thought that was kind of a unique subcategory of witnesses because you have a lot of people who come forward and they say there's some sort of unidentified aerial phenomena. You have mass witnesses. You have, Roswell, but how many incidences do you have that involve nuclear weapons? And I think the fact that, there's such potential there makes it a very interesting case.
Yeah, and we can talk about the implications maybe after we talk about what happened.
Right.
But this was a very, very serious incident.
Salas in this press conference and in other press conferences said, quote, "We're not trying to prove anything. We're relaying the information we have, the truth as we know it, and those facts." He also said, "We'll refer to these objects as UFOs." And he said they have several signed affidavits from military personnel specifically who are willing to give their testimony. And at the time, there hadn't been that congressional hearing yet on UAPs and UFOs. And one of the reasons he was giving this press conference was he was hoping that they would have a subcommittee on the topic.
Right. So yeah, this, I guess the point there is that this is still sort of a story that's unfolding.
Yes.
And who knows what information will come out that he was not allowed to say before because it wasn't released.
So he describes himself as being in a capsule 60 feet underground where they were locked in. The missiles were a mile away from the launch control center in a ring around the central point.
Yeah, and that's not unusual. Like the design of the place, they don't typically put the command center like where the missiles are. Probably for safety reasons.
So I'm listening on YouTube. I'm watching this press conference. It was live streamed at the time, and now I'm watching it on YouTube. And after this point, when he makes these initial statements and kind of talks about where he was on that day and what he was doing, he brings up an interview, a phone interview with Colonel Walter Fiegel. It's a recorded statement from 1996 in which the colonel talks about how they were doing maintenance or guidance cams because there was security on site at the silos. And one of them went down. And so when he talked with security out there, they reported there was this UFO hovering over the site. And he said, and I'm directly quoting here, "Yeah, right. What are you guys drinking out there?" And we sent strike teams up to both sites.
Now, let me stop you there again. I've seen this in many, many cases, even modern cases where skeptics or whoever will say, "Oh, well, they saw a UFO, but they're just drinking." I'm drinking right now. I've drinking in the past, and I've never seen a UFO. What do you need to drink to see a UFO? That's what I want to know.
Well, I think when someone says that, it's just they're in so much disbelief. It's like, what are you smoking? What are you drinking? What are you doing?
No, but in some cases, they've literally proposed that as a solution to the case. They were probably drunk.
Right. I think in this case, though, he's kind of like making a joke. Like, what are you guys drinking up there?
He thought it was just a gag or something.
Drinking the Kool-Aid. Right. Yeah. And he said, so he sent out some strike teams. And he said, I didn't tell them what we'd heard via the radio. So he didn't relay that information that they'd reported UFOs over the radio. Instead, he told them to call back on the VHS. Do you know what VHS is?
VHS?
Yeah.
It's like the cassette tape, but bigger?
I don't know. It said VHS, and I was like...
Do you mean V8? No, I think you're probably talking about VHF.
Oh, that must be what it is. Yeah.
That's a very high frequency. That's a radio range.
Oh, that makes more sense.
I won't go into all that stuff. Yes, I do have my amateur radio license, and I do know all about that stuff. But let's move on. We don't want to get diverted into more nerd territory there.
So Fiegel said that at this point, the sightings were again confirmed. They had 2 maintenance crews, 2 strike teams, and 2 security teams all reporting it. So this is from Walter Fiegel from that 96 phone interview.
Yeah.
Now we go back to the security conference, or back to the press conference where Salas is offering his testimony. So Salas said, I got a call from my security guard, my primary security guard. We had about 6, as I recall. I was downstairs 60 feet underground in a capsule monitoring and controlling 10 nuclear-tipped Minutemen missiles. I got a call that morning that they were seeing strange lights in the sky. I disregarded that call and told him to call when something more significant happened. I got another call subsequent to that call, and this time it was a more intense tone in the guard's voice, and it was very clearly frightened. He said there was a bright, glowing red object hovering outside the front gate, and it was oval-shaped. He had all the other guards there with their weapons drawn, but Salas goes on to say no shots were fired. So Salas went to wake his commanding officer, Fred Maywald, and as he was relating the phone calls, the weapons, specifically the missiles, started going down one after the other in the no-go where you can't launch. And he says we lost multiple weapons within minutes of receiving that second phone call. And that pretty much sums up the interviews that I have seen with this gentleman. That was his experience. I didn't read of any direct eyewitness accounts. He didn't see a UFO himself. He can't remember the names of any of the security guards, the strike team, etc. But he still is a valuable witness.
Extremely valuable witness. You have a ranking military officer here who's going on the record about something that happened. And I read that he said he was willing to speak out about it also
yes.
because the documents had been released. So he figured since that was in the public domain, it was probably safe to talk about it.
Right. And he even has written some books. He is, in fact, a UFO believer.
Well, I mean, after this.
After that, yeah. He said he kind of opened up. He was more open-minded after this experience. He was, exploring the whole UFO phenomena. And once it was released by the FOIA Act and more details came out, he felt like he could speak.
Yeah. So that was Oscar Flight, I believe, that he was involved in.
Yeah.
There's also another flight, Echo Flight, and that was Captain Eric Carlson. Oh, you talked about this one, though, and Walt Fiegel, or Figel, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So they're pretty much the same thing. There's two different flights, but you have security teams out there doing maintenance, and or the security teams were out there watching the people doing maintenance, because this is an extremely classified site. So they have to make sure that the maintenance workers aren't like, Soviet agents or something like that. And the same story, basically. They got an alarm. There was a UFO hovering over the thing, and the missiles went offline one at a time. And at some point, all of the missiles, like very quickly, they all went offline, and the missiles were they were all shut off. And this is a really, really big deal, because if Russia had this capability, then they could shut off all of our nukes and nuke us, and we would not be able to retaliate. And therefore, the mutually assured destruction thesis is proven false if they could disable our stuff. Another way to look at it is we have multiple ways of launching nukes. We have submarines. I don't know historically when those became available, but submarines, jet bombers, ICBMs, or whatever. So if the United States Command, perceived this as an incursion from Russia, they might think that Russia was attacking us. And if they disarmed some of our nukes, they might send some nukes shortly thereafter. So an event like this could have potentially set off a nuclear war. It didn't, luckily, but this is the sort of thing when everybody's, really jumpy about this stuff to begin with. Having something like this happen is a really dangerous thing to have happen, particularly because there were UFOs involved, and we don't know what those UFOs were. So I did see descriptions of those UFOs. They said that they were basically oval or saucer shaped, and that they were glowing red or orange. I don't know if you saw that anywhere.
No, and I looked in Blue Book. specifically.
No, this one is not in Blue Books.
No,
it was
it's definitely not.
highly classified.
And it's towards the end of when Blue Book was shut down as
Yeah.
well. So there weren't a lot of files around that date anyways.
Actually, 1967 was one of the hottest years for UFO sightings, but they're mostly civilian sightings.
Yeah, not a lot around Malmstrom on that date, though.
Right. If there's no civilians involved, if it's just military, especially United States, especially at a highly classified nuclear site, chances are you will not see it in Blue Book.
Yeah, and I also looked on the Black Vault, and Greenwald did request through FOIA all documents related to the incident, including any injuries, because I guess there was a report of an injury at one point.
Yeah.
Which you can talk about if you have it in your notes.
I do.
And all he was given was an 87-page technical report on the mechanics of the failure, the subsequent investigation, and the conclusion, which, as we'll talk about later, they couldn't determine why the missiles had gone down.
Right, yeah.
And I read through this report. Well, I skimmed this report, and like I said, it's just technicalities. It's very technical. It's related to engineering. It's not something I could follow.
Super exciting stuff.
It was quite dry. I remember saying on several occasions to Agent Anderson, this is some dry stuff.
Well, and I can almost guarantee you that it's inaccurate, because why on earth would they release technical details for our ICBMs that anybody could access?
It was not like that. It was more like system ABF did, we tested this with the resistor and it was functional. And
so they didn't give actual specifications. Okay.
No, it had nothing to do with the missiles. It was all computer checks.
Oh, I see. Well, that sounds really exciting.
It was.
I looked at a few pages of that document, but I didn't look at the whole thing because it's pretty long.
It was 87. I skimmed it.
Yeah, you skimmed the whole thing.
I was looking for something, and the only thing I found in there was that there had been rumors of UFO sightings, which had in fact been disproven and could not be substantiated.
And it's interesting they would put that in there.
They did. They put it in there, but it was like a paragraph.
Considering 4 different teams and some other miscellaneous people actually saw them, it's pretty interesting that they point that out in the report.
Yes, and actually Robert Salas points that out.
Does he really?
He does. In one of his interviews, he does point that out.
I must have not seen that interview. All right, so you pretty much talked about this one as well. It's very similar. So let me scroll past this. The missiles go offline, and it turns out that the problem was with the guidance control system. The base and everything still had their electricity and all their power.
Yeah.
The missiles still had their power. Everything was still turned on, but somehow just the guidance and control was disabled on every single missile. So when that happened, they sent out the security teams to where the people were, and the Lieutenant Fiegel didn't tell them about the UFOs. Sounds like exactly what you said, basically. So I'll skip this stuff. It's pretty much the same story.
Go to QFON.
Yeah. So the base. Well, they did a couple of investigations of what had happened. As you just said, there's pages and pages of that, but they couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. The only thing they could do to sort of replicate it was to put an electric pulse onto like some logic junctions, but they could only shut down the controls, the control of the missiles like 80% of the time. And in order to do that, whoever shut it down would have had to have physical access, because everything was heavily shielded for interference, because obviously they don't want this stuff randomly happening. Interference happens all the time. So it was shielded. In order to do that, you would need something like a targeted EMP, a very targeted EMP, because a general EMP would have shut off all of the electricity in the area, not just a very, very specific thing, not just the control module. So they would have needed a huge machine, and they would have needed to point it at each missile individually, and somebody would have noticed that. There's no way somebody's rolling around the base with an EMP machine and somebody doesn't notice it. Not a chance. And as Agent Ether said earlier, these missiles are kind of spread apart. So either they would have had 10 machines and they would have had to synchronize each machine to go off at roughly the same time, or somebody would have had to go into this huge circle and like faster than the speed of sound and hit each missile in sequence. So I have a description that was given to Salas. This is what Salas said this in an interview. So he said that one of the soldiers or guards called him, and they saw a star that was zigzagging across the sky, and then he saw another light do the exact same thing, and this time it was larger and closer. He asked his flight security controller, or FSC, the non-commissioned officer who was in charge of Launch Control Center site security, to come over and take a look. They both stood there watching the lights streak directly above them, stop, change directions at high speed, and return overhead. The NCO ran into the building and phoned me at my station in the underground capsule. He reported to me that they had been seeing lights making strange maneuvers over the facility and that they weren't aircraft. I replied, "Great, you just keep watching them and let me know if they get any closer." And that's the report he got where he didn't take it seriously. He thought it was just a joke. So that's like the specific statement, probably the same thing you mentioned earlier. But a few minutes later, the security NCO called again, and this time he was frightened and shouting. He said, "Sir, there's one hovering outside the front gate." "One what?" "A UFO. It's just sitting there. We're all just looking at it. What do you want us to do?" "What? What does it look like?" "I can't really describe it. It's glowing red." "What are we supposed to do?" "Make sure the site is secure, and I'll phone the command post." Yeah, make sure the site is secure. Like, in other words, don't let it in. Like, yeah, make sure it doesn't come in. Keep it outside the gates. "Make sure the site is secure, and I'll phone the command post." "Sir, I have to go now. One of the guys just got injured."
So I did see that in one of his interviews. He's told the guard to secure the perimeter specifically. And he's like, "I don't know why I said that."
Yeah.
Like in the interview, he's like, that's just what I said off the top of my head was secure the perimeter.
Uh-huh.
And then the guard told him someone had been injured.
Well, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to secure the perimeter.
He's like, "I don't know, secure the perimeter."
Yeah, that's just their instinct. Now, I read that the injury was not severe, but I also read that the injured soldier was airlifted off of the base.
Huh.
So if he just had a little bump and tickle, needed a little Band-Aid there, why did they airlift him off the base? That's expensive to do. And I'm wondering if this didn't somehow involve a UFO. As we've seen in many other cases, there have been physical effects from UFOs, such as the Falcon Lake incident.
Maybe it's just a coincidence and he had like an aneurysm or a seizure or something.
We don't know. I mean, like I said, the documentation on this event is pretty sparse because it's still classified. Like, this is still a highly classified event, at least pieces of it, even though we know it happened. We don't have the full picture of what happened. There was a senator in the UFO hearing who, what was his name? I forget. I mean, I'm not going to look it up, but he's like, he was asking the military about it, and the military's like, "Yeah, whatever," and he's like, "Well, I might not be somebody important, wink, wink, nudge, nudge," because he was important, but, you should probably tell us about it, basically. So they're still not really telling anybody about this case, even elected officials who are very high up in our government. Anyways, continuing on with what Salas said here. "Before I could ask about the injury, he was off the line. I immediately went over to my commander, Lieutenant Fred Mywald, who was on a scheduled sleep period. I woke him and began to brief him about the phone calls and what was going on topside. In the middle of this conversation, we both heard the first alarm klaxon resound throughout the confined space of the capsule, and both immediately look over at the panel of annunciator lights at the commander's station."
Your whole monologue
Yeah.
here sounds so much better
Than what you did?
than what I did.
Well, it is repeating what you said, but this is like his actual interview, right?
So many interviews.
Yeah. So I clipped these parts out because these parts I thought were really good at describing the action. So you gave kind of like an overview, and then I'm sort of just giving what he actually said, right? So, I mean, I think both are useful. So he said a no-go light and 2 red security lights were lit, indicating problems at one of our missile sites. Fred jumped up to query the system to determine the cause of the problem. Before he could do so, another alarm went off at another site, and then another and another simultaneously. Within the next few seconds, we had lost 6 to 8 missiles to a no-go, inoperable condition. And I imagine at this point, they are like literally shitting their pants because this is a nuclear site. Like nothing ever happens. They're probably bored out of their mind most of the time. And then something finally happens and they're like, holy crap, is this it? Are we all going to die right now? Is this the end of the world? Because that's what would have happened.
And like, they don't know what to do. On top of everything, they're not prepared for this scenario. That is not one of the scenarios in the handbook.
Yeah, they were not trained on this at all. This is insane. Would you like to continue reading there, Agent Ether?
Oh. After reporting this incident to the command post, Salas phoned the security guard. He said that the man who had approached the UFO had not been injured seriously, but was being evacuated by helicopter to the base.
See, there it is. Why?
I don't know. Maybe they're just taking precautions.
If he bumped his elbow. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Once topside, I spoke directly with the security guard about the UFOs. He added that the UFO had a red glow and appeared to be saucer-shaped. He repeated that it had been immediately outside the front gate, hovering silently.
Ooh.
We went down a security patrol to check out our LFs after the shutdown, and they reported sighting another UFO during that patrol. They also lost radio contact with our site immediately after reporting the UFO.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. We've done cases before with electrical interference involving UFOs, so that's kind of strange.
Now, this is interesting because in the next part, the statement that you have says they had not been able to bring the missiles back up online by maintenance the next morning, but from what I read, they came back online within several minutes.
Oh, really? Because I read that it took all day to get them back online.
Huh. Another discrepancy.
Which when you have a case like this, it happened so long ago and you don't have really good sources of information, and you have a gentleman doing his best to recall something that happened in 1967, it would make sense if he gave slightly different versions during different interviews.
Or another option would be that it was reported incorrectly.
Yeah.
You know, that's one other thing. He wrote a couple books, so I'm guessing the information in his books is consistent.
Probably, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the, just to run over it again, but it's a more detailed description from the horse of the mouth, or the mouth of the horse itself. So there's the investigation. We already kind of talked about the investigation where they couldn't figure out what had caused the missiles to malfunction. They sent out a couple of Boeing engineers, and
Boeing.
Yeah, well, Boeing was awesome back at this day. In 1967, Boeing was the shit. These days, it's kind of depressing to see how far they've fallen. But in 1967, Boeing was awesome. Their engineer named Robert Kaminsky said, quote, "There were no significant failures, engineering data, or findings that would explain how 10 missiles were knocked off alert. And, quote, there was no technical explanation that could explain the event." And they looked. They sent multiple teams. They sent the engineers. They sent military teams. They sent civilian teams. They investigated the crap out of this thing. And like I said, the only thing they could do to semi-replicate it was using a 10-volt pulse into a data line. But again, it only worked 80% of the time and required physical access.
And it was the only time at this specific base there would ever be an incident like this that we know of.
There are supposedly other UFOs, nukes, incidences, but I didn't do any of them for this episode.
Did you say it like Agent ETA?
Yeah, I did.
Supposedly.
I always do it that way now because somebody, I think, did they give us a bad review? I don't know, but somebody was saying that criticizing Agent ETA for instead of saying supposedly, saying supposedly, correcting it. Like, it's for all of you people out there who are unaware, it's actually kind of rude to correct people.
Oh my God.
So I don't know. I kind of make a point of doing supposedly because I amuse myself doing it, and probably most people don't even notice because it goes by so quick. But I always throw the B in there just for fun, just to troll that one listener, even if they're probably not even listening anymore.
We're just operating out of the living room. Give us a break, guys.
Yeah.
We are professionals.
We're recording in the living room right now. But yeah, I always just to poke fun at that individual, in a fun way, not in a mean way, but in a fun way. And if they're still listening, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's all good fun. We're having a lot of fun with it. So, troll harder, I guess. It's all good fun. And Agent ETA, he's very trollable. He gets a kick out of that stuff. All right, other sightings in the area. Would you like to hit us with some of these, Agent Ether?
All right, I guess we're going to do this. So Agent Anderson and I had this conversation, and he and I remember it differently, which means that he's wrong.
I literally said that I am doing a couple of Blue Book cases. I said that. And I also said it was so much fun to look at Blue Book files, and we haven't done one in a while, so I'm also going to do Blue Book for this week's episode. That's right, guys. Tomorrow, I will record an episode on Blue Book sightings from 1967, from March 1967.
And I will not be joining that bonus episode because I'm taking
slacker?
An art class.
Oh, well, that one too.
An art class. I feel very artsy because I'm a student for the first time in 20 years. That's been interesting. But moving on.
Are you going to drink wine? Never mind. Let's save it for the after hours.
So, other sightings in the area around the same time.
This one's from before the first one here.
Around.
Second one. The first two are from before.
Around the same time.
From February.
Are you going to let me?
Go for it. Do it.
Okay. So we have one in February 8th of 1967. Louis de Leon saw two UFOs that were glowing orange and red. She was driving near Chester, Montana, and that's not far north from the Malmstrom base. And then later that day, Jake Walkman had an encounter 10 miles east of Chester. He was startled awake by a bright light outside of his house. He went to his backyard and saw a flying saucer.
Yeah.
Very brief.
Yeah, those are brief summaries of those sightings.
We also have February 9th. George Kawanishi saw a UFO above the Chester train yard. So this is all in a similar area, all in Chester.
Yeah.
And it was a bright ball of light. So by the numbers, there was a full-blown flap in 67, and there are a lot of other sightings in the Blue Book files.
Right. So the busiest, I believe, I'd have to double check the numbers, but I believe the busiest year for Blue Book was 1966, and I think 67 was the second busiest year. So that's what I mean when I said earlier that there was like a lot of sightings in 1967. There's a ton of them. I think Blue Book has something like 120 sightings, at least 120 just for March.
Did you look as you were taking notes on the Blue Book files and see how many other people had viewed your files?
The Blue Book files? Yeah. No, I didn't look this time.
I always look.
It's not that many.
No.
It's usually like 20 or 30.
Go online, go to Fold 3, read some of these first-hand account witness statements that have been declassified. Please, because sometimes it's just a dozen. You can be one of a dozen out of billions of people on the planet who is reading this declassified information.
A sighting that only 10 other people have ever read about, outside of obviously the people in Blue Book who read about it. And who knows who else in the chain of command who was briefed on it? We don't know.
You can pretend like you're someone important.
Yeah, Well, you are someone important. Everybody's somebody important. Not necessarily somebody important in the military. But no, but for reals, like this is such a treasure trove of information. Project Blue Book files on Fold 3. They offer the files for free. I would pay for them willingly, but it's free. And normally, I covered this in a previous episode. I don't remember if it was a bonus episode or not, but there was a memo that said, I know you're pouting. I kind of want something else too. Maybe we'll go for a walkie poo later. But there was a memo stating that let's put the files somewhere in the middle of nowhere so people can't access them easily. And somebody paid somebody else to go out there and scan all of them, and they put them online for free.
All of them.
All of them.
All of the files.
For free. This is such a treasure that it's unbelievable we have access to this kind of stuff. It's just so cool. These files are like, priceless. So if you have any interest in this topic at all and you have free time, please go peruse the Blue Book files. You will not be disappointed. There's always a cover card, or almost always a cover card, that gives a summary, the basic details, time, place, number of witnesses, duration, number of objects, and that kind of thing. And it also gives an evaluation. Sometimes the evaluation is accurate. Quite often it is not, and I will talk about a couple of those later on.
And go ahead and look back through our episodes. We've done quite a number on just Blue Books. One of my favorite was our Christmas episodes. So yeah, go back, take a walk back through time and check them out.
Yeah, we've done, I forget how many at this point, but
8, 9, 10,
something like that. We've done a few of them and they're always fun. I could do a podcast just on Blue Book files, but
agreed.
Speaking of Blue Book files, let's get to it.
Okay, Blue Book. Go.
All right, so I'll start here. There was a sighting on March 21st. Now, this is literally the first one I clicked on. I just clicked on one, and it turns out that I believe it's relevant to this case. So this was March 21st, 1967, which is around the time period of the Malmstrom Air Force Base sighting. This happened in Farmington, Wisconsin, which is pretty far to the east of the base. It's, Wisconsin is nowhere near Malmstrom Air Force Base. It's closer to the East Coast, but it's still very similar. This happened at 0235Z with Zulu. I don't know what that translates to in like normal people time. Zulu is what is that like? Greenwich median time? I don't know. I forget. I'd have to look it up. But anyways, it happened at night, and it was a combination of civilian and military witnesses. Civilian witnesses saw a round red orange object that appeared to be 20 yards in diameter, or about 60 feet in diameter. It moved to the east and then back to its original position, and then it disappeared over the horizon to the west, and the total time of the sighting was about 15 minutes. It was seen by 2 civilians who were redacted, a carpenter, a housewife, and 2 radar operators from the 674th Radar Squadron in Osceola, Wisconsin. Here's a quote from the file. Observers at the time of sightings were Mr. Redacted, Farm, which is located 3 miles west of Osceola Air Force Base, Wisconsin. After receiving call, Airman Redacted and Redacted went outside of Sage Building to try and observe object reported. They did notice an object in the general direction of the initial sighting. They said it appeared bigger than a star and silver in color. Shaped and diameter was not known due to distance of object. 20 minutes later, object had disappeared. And the conclusion was
Venus.
Because of course it was.
Well, like you said, this is in, 67?
Yeah, by 1967, even well before 1967, Project Blue Book was in full debunk mode. The vast majority of sightings were identified as Venus or meteors or a mirage of Canopus. No, that's not true. Mirage of Canopus, that's what a prominent skeptic said that what was that sighting? It's on the tip of my tongue. We did an episode on it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The guy who saw a UFO with markings on the side and stuff, the police officer, I can't believe I can't remember his name right now. I'll remember it later as soon as I hit stop record. Anyways, do you want to hit the next one up?
Let's see. We have March 20th of 67 in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Which is closer.
To the event?
Closer to Malmstrom Air Force Base than Wisconsin.
So you have 1300 Zulu. One witness saw a teardrop-shaped object 30 to 40 feet long, silver, fuzzy, moving extremely fast with a short trail.
Eval is short for evaluation.
I know. I'm just thinking as I'm reading. Fuzzy? That is such a weird description.
No, what I think they mean is like hazy.
Yeah.
That's not unusual for UFOs to be seen as hazy.
I guess I'm just picturing this big teardrop, fuzzy, cat-like.
Like a huge stuffed animal.
Furry. Sorry.
No, I thought that too. I definitely thought that too.
So I'm pausing here because my brain is processing the information as given.
It's screaming through the sky saying, "Row."
The evaluation was that it was a cat. No, that it was a meteor or sunlight bouncing off of a cloud.
Yeah, they gave two different evaluations there, which I find kind of humorous because they're like, okay, wait. Meteor. But wait. If it's not a meteor, it's sunlight hitting a cloud or a meteor.
But it's something that's not a UFO.
Or Venus or anything besides a UFO.
Maybe
exactly.
A cat.
Yeah, maybe a cat. By the description, this one on the surface does seem like it might be a meteor, perhaps. But on the other hand, have you ever seen a teardrop-shaped 30 to 40 foot long meteor? A meteor you would describe as 30 to 40 feet long.
I'd like to.
That is huge. I've never seen a teardrop shaped one. They just streak. They streak across the sky.
Well, maybe he means teardrop on one edge, like turned off to its side, which, I mean, let's be honest.
Who knows?
Could be a meteor then. But who knows?
It was during the day. Do you know how bright a meteor needs to be seen during the day? It would probably like smash a city or something. That's crazy.
You're crazy.
I know I am. But I just thought that one has nothing to do with this case. I was tickled by the evaluation there. A meteor or sunlight or both or neither. Who knows? It's time to get crazy. So I did find another one which happened in March, but the time and date are unknown because the cover card is illegible.
That's a shame.
It's really hard to read, but I could tell that it was in New Jersey. I could not read the city it was in New Jersey. New Jersey, for those of you who are not from the States, that's on the East Coast of the United States, south of New York City, or, most people are familiar with New York City. That's why I say that. And the conclusion is insufficient data. Would you like to read the witness statement there?
Dear sirs, one night a show was just coming on and my brother was looking out the window. He told me to look out the window. I saw what I thought was a flying saucer. At the same time, my TV went nuts. I got my camera and took a picture of it when it was white. I was so excited I didn't take a picture of it when it turned red. He had black and white film, and that was written in a different hand.
Yeah, so
brother.
This is a handwritten letter, and so after the sentence, I was so excited I didn't take a picture of it when it turned red. In parentheses, it's written, so the regular letter is written in a surprisingly easy to read cursive. The only easy to read cursive I've ever seen in the Blue Book files. So thank you, sir, for that, whoever wrote this. And in parentheses, it's written in like capital block letters or something. He had black and white film. So it's a different hand. And I'm guessing that might be the other witness, the brother who wrote that.
So I took a picture when it was white, not when it was red. It went over my house and started to pick up speed. That was the last I saw of it. So at first, upon reading this witness statement, I thought he meant he took a picture of the television.
Oh,
That's just the first. I was like, why would he take a picture of his TV?
that would be extremely useful for the Blue Book files. Also, just to note, there was no photograph in the files.
There never is.
There are.
I suppose.
Often there are, but unfortunately, there are also a lot of photographs that are just sort of stuck into other files that are not related. There are a lot of photographs that are so hard to see because they're scanned in or they're photocopies of the original. They just look like black with a little bit of like fuzzy spots here and there. You can't really see anything. So this photo very well could be in the Blue Book files somewhere, just misfiled or, stuck in a back file somewhere else or something. I don't know.
Someday we'll have sophisticated AI technology and it can just sort through the Blue Book files for just photos.
Yeah. And I could tell it, tell me about the Blue Book files. And I say, okay, what about this case? What was that? Oh, well, that was the aliens from Proxima Centauri. They were actually here because for their culture, it's entertaining to come and watch us drive around in our cars. And that's what they were interested in. And that's why they were here.
I imagine we are entertaining.
We very well could be. We do some pretty strange stuff. Like the old joke goes, if an alien came and saw us interacting with dogs, they would think the dogs were in charge because we serve them, right? We feed them, we clean them, we walk them around, we pick up their poop for them. Like, it looks like the dogs are in charge.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah.
I don't know. That's the way I read the joke originally was funnier than that. I'm not a comedian.
You're not very funny.
I know. That's why I don't do comedy. I have a few jokes once in a while that I crack that are pretty good, but yeah, definitely not a comedian. But so that was that case. So I'll do the next one, I guess. I did find a very rare unidentified sighting, which for 1967, something that's labeled as a legit unidentified sighting, that was extremely rare in 1967 for the Blue Book files. There's not that many of them that I can find. Most of them are identified, even if it doesn't make sense. So on March 6, 0601 Zulu, 40 minutes, two objects, Benton Harbor, Michigan, 40 minutes or more, Benton Harbor, Michigan. There were two witnesses, and on the cover card where it says two witnesses, there's something that looks like there's something handwritten there, but it's illegible. You can't, it's too faded. You can't really read it. So it says on the cover card, the brief summary and analysis. Wife heard a strange sound and looked out of the bedroom. She saw a saucer-like craft travel toward Lake Michigan. After watching it for about 20 minutes, she awoke her husband. The craft was as big as a Greyhound bus. One witness only saw the object over the lake. Finally, another object met the first over the lake, and the two moved to the west. Other reports were noted during this time as stated by the witnesses. However, they only involved a bright white light. The case is being carried as unidentified in the Air Force files, which is really cool. So there's a couple of description type stuff, summaries. I'll skip the summary type stuff because it's sort of repeated in the actual witness statement. So here's this is somebody from the Air Force who wrote this statement. I'm guessing it doesn't say who the person was. Received a call from Major Niles, Selfridge Air Force Base, Michigan, concerning a UFO sighted by various people in Benton Harbor on March 6, 0040 EST, Eastern Standard Time. One observer, redacted, reported the observation to Major Niles. Mr. Redacted's phone number. Yeah, this is hilarious. I'm not going to say the phone number, but the name is redacted, but their phone number is in the file, which is like crazy. Why would you redact their name and put their phone number in there?
And not only that, where he worked at the time.
Where he works at station WSJM, St. Joseph's, Michigan. I can say that because he definitely doesn't work there anymore. This was 1967, and I'd be very surprised if he still worked there. I'm hoping he moved up in his career field and got a higher paying job, and he's still out there rocking the airwaves, right? Whoever this witness may be. Contact with Mr. Redacted revealed that his wife had heard a funny sound in the driveway, which had woken her up. The sound was like snow tires crunching on snow. That's really interesting.
I haven't heard anything like that before.
Never?
No.
Not even when you were in a snowy area?
No, I mean, in the Blue Book files.
Yeah. So from what I understand, this is an area where it does snow. So it doesn't say in the file that I could find, but if it was snowy out, it could just be a coincidence, right? Maybe a car pulled into their driveway to like get turned around or something. It happens. So it could just be literally a car pulling into the driveway to do like a 3-point turn. And that's what caught her attention. Anyways.
This was in March though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there could be snow in March.
March 6th. There could be.
It's Michigan. I don't know.
Does it snow often in Michigan? From what I understand,
it can. It's cold, but March, it's a little late.
I'm not that familiar with Michigan. Anyways, she heard she described it as a funny sound though. So it kind of suggests that it sounds like snow tires crunching on snow.
Not quite.
But not exactly like that. She got up and looked out the window and saw a saucer traveling toward Lake Michigan. Also, if it was somebody getting turned around in her driveway, she would have seen the headlights, right? So who knows? I don't know. It's weird. She watched this saucer for about 20 minutes and then awoke her husband at 0100 EST, 1 a.m. Now, I just got to say, if you see a UFO and you watch it for 20 minutes and you don't wake me up, I'm going to be very disappointed in you.
That might be grounds for divorce.
Not divorce. I'll just be very disappointed. If you see a UFO and I'm asleep, you wake me up immediately. You don't even necessarily have to come in and get me. Just yell your head off for me to wake up.
Okay.
Because come on.
Noted.
What the hell is even going on here?
Got it.
20 minutes to wake her husband. That is just, who knows? Maybe her husband was really tired or something. I don't know.
Maybe he was mean. He's like a mean drunk and she was scared of him.
She waited 20 minutes to wake up her husband, which is insane. The saucer was as big as a Greyhound bus. It was as big as a tangerine held at arm's length. That's pretty big. That's like angular size. I don't know. I would say like 4 times the size of the moon or something. Like that's huge for an angular size.
Now I want a tangerine.
Tangerines are so good. Its shape was oval, and Mr. Redacted could envision a saucer shape. Mr. Redacted only saw the object over the lake. At 0142 EST, another saucer met the first, and they hovered for several minutes before disappearing. Various colors were noted: red, yellow, green, and white. He said that they couldn't confirm that the saucer had made the noise. Other people called Mr. Redacted after he announced his sighting on the radio, all saying they had seen a similar thing. Mr. Redacted was asked to describe the thing that he had seen, and he said that it wasn't a thing, but a flying saucer. He said that most of the witnesses only saw a white light. Mr. Redacted address is redacted, Benton Harbor, Michigan. Now that's interesting because the cover card said that all of the other witnesses only saw a light, not a saucer. But this says that Mr. Redacted said that most of the other witnesses said that they only saw a light, which implies that some of them also saw the saucer, which would make sense. So this is actually a legit bona fide mass sighting that I've never heard of before, which is really cool. This is the kind of really, really interesting stuff that you can uncover in the Blue Book files. And this is why earlier, I was imploring you, begging you to look through these files because they are awesome. You find so many great cases like this in there that nobody's ever heard of. Anyways, there's a lot of these. And like I said, I haven't done a Blue Book in a while, so I'm going to do a Blue Book for March 67 for this week's bonus episode with a focus on cases that have some bearing on the Malmstrom base. So I'm looking for oval, disc, or saucer-shaped objects, either silver, metallic, or glowing red or orange, or the main focus. Those are the sort of the things I'm sort of looking for. But a lot of times, particularly when you have different witnesses seeing something from different angles or vantage points, you might report an oval, you might report a saucer, you might report something seen edge on that might look more cigar shaped. So it depends on the vantage point. But if you have a lot of witnesses, and there's a bunch, these are just like literally the first files that I clicked on. Like, I did not search through them exhaustively. These are literally the first ones I clicked on. And other than the one that had the entertaining explanation that I just threw in there, they bear resemblance to what was seen at Malmstrom Air Force Base. That's how commonly this thing was seen, apparently, is just I just so happened to click on these files and they looked very similar to what was seen in the other sighting. So that's pretty interesting. Whatever this was, it was apparently seen all over the place by many people. All right, so that's all we got for you this time. Final thoughts. You got any final thoughts on this case, Agent Ether?
Well, I've been wanting to do this case for a while. I know you've put it up to vote a couple times.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, people just voted for the other topic every time. I usually put 2 topics up to vote, and I've wanted to do this one as well, so I kind of keep throwing it in the vote, I recycle it, say, hey, how about it this time? Come on, guys, you want to do it this time? Sometimes I'll throw it in there, like, I'll do a vote, and sometimes, like, I want to do a case, so I'll put it up against something that I don't think they're going to vote for.
And they'll vote for that.
They'll vote for it.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because a lot of the time when that happens, I end up having a lot of fun with the topic anyways,
It's always fun.
Yeah.
Even things like the Yucca Man.
The Yucca Man was really fun.
Yucca Man.
You should have come on that one. It was a lot of fun.
I was busy.
I know.
Shopping and going
And
to the
also had no
movies
interest in the topic.
But yeah, final thoughts about this case. I found it very interesting. I wish we had more witness statements from like a security guard would be amazing, or one of the strike team.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. But other than that, I thought it was a really great case. You have somebody who came forward, who's willing to talk about it, and you have a lot of press about the topic as well. When I was looking around about Malmstrom, a lot of newsprint came up, including recent articles. So there is interest in the topic still to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa, I'm going through puberty here or something. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And for me, I would love to have that stuff. The gold standard is something like a written witness statement that was taken right after the event happened, or pretty close, like if not right after, at least in the days following, so when it's fresh in their memory, right? I'm pretty sure that exists somewhere, but it's still classified.
Yeah, what we have now is 2 different witnesses.
Yeah.
Coming forward saying, yes, different people on these strike teams and security teams told us they saw a UFO. And yes, confirming that those nuclear warheads did go down.
Yeah, but that's the important thing. We have actual government documents released verifying the story that these were released, because anybody can come out, make up a UFO story. Say, yeah, I used to be in the military. I totally saw all this really weird stuff, man. Buy my book. But the fact that the government released official declassified documents about this event, and in those documents, they verify that the missiles did go down.
And don't forget, say there were rumors.
Yeah,
rumors of UFOs.
They were just rumors, though, man. Just rumors, bro. Nothing to worry about here. But that's a really important piece of evidence, because we know for a fact that this event, at least some version of it, happened. And I see no reason to believe that Robert Salas is lying about his story.
He seemed pretty legit. And I know you've said in the past that just because someone seems legit doesn't mean that they are.
Yeah.
But the way he describes the soldier when he was speaking with him, and he's relating how there was genuine distress in his voice as he was describing for the second time seeing some sort of unidentified object. Like you can hear in his voice, I feel like, an honesty when he's relating this story. Like I believe him. He's very believable. And I feel like there's no reason for him to make this up.
Right. Yeah. Other than to sell his books.
Yeah, but his books came later.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, his books came later, and he's been pushing for a congressional hearing for a long time. And that seemed his main goal wasn't to sell books, but was to get this congressional hearing.
Well, and it begs the question, why haven't they released more information on this particular sighting?
Right.
I don't know. What are they hiding? What are they covering up? I would love to see the written statements, which they certainly took. They certainly took written statements from everybody there. I guarantee you that happened.
Right, because it's such a serious event.
So they had everybody take a written statement, and they probably also interviewed them as well. Whether or not they recorded that interview, I don't know. But there is definitely more information about this case that has not been released.
It wasn't a simple engineering investigation by Boeing. That was not the only thing that happened.
Yeah. So I would love to see those witness statements, because quite often, if you read through those statements, you will find important details that reveal facets to the case that make it more interested or complicated than it seems on its surface. So like the injured guy, how was he injured? What happened? They don't just airlift people off the base. That doesn't just happen for
I think he got excited and stepped over a rock and twisted his ankle.
They're not going to airlift him for a twisted ankle.
I don't know. I feel like that's something.
Dude,
and then he fell down and hit his head.
Dude, this is the military.
Then he had a concussion.
They're not going to even airlift somebody for a broken arm
and then
or
he
concussion.
Had a seizure.
They're not going to airlift somebody for that, right?
I don't know. I do not know.
I don't know either, but maybe I'm wrong. I was never in the military, but I find it unlikely that they're going to airlift somebody for a minor injury. It just seems unlikely to me. They have Jeeps or cars or golf carts to get around, whatever they had. I doubt they're walking everywhere on this base. Who knows? Anyways, I do have a quote from a communication from this case that was declassified. So this is not something that was given to the public. This is a classified document or a communication that was classified that now it's been released. Here's a quote. "The fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified is cause for grave concern to this HQ." The stress they put on that is interesting. So they were, to borrow a phrase from myself earlier, they were crapping their pants. Imagine that you're the United States Military Command and you don't necessarily believe in aliens from another planet. A UFO comes to the base, hovers over there, disables your missiles, and then leaves. Now, just as a reminder, every military on the planet at this time had an aircraft that could hover. They're called helicopters, right? So it's conceivable to the command that some foreign advanced technology, an advanced helicopter or something, was able to penetrate our airspace and disable our nuclear weapons. And if you're the people in charge, you would be extremely concerned about this. And as they put it here, is cause for grave concern. It's chilling to read about this, and it's also lucky this is probably yet another time where we didn't end up killing ourselves or each other with nukes when it could have possibly happened. And in the episode, I will use a quote that was used to close down Project Blue Book. I've said this before on the show, but it's so the previous quote is, "The fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified is cause for grave concern to this HQ." Here's a different quote. This is a public quote. This is what they told the public during the study that I won't get into that whole thing. I've talked about it before, But this is what they said when they closed down Project Blue Book. 1. No UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever indication of threat to our national security. And 2. There was no evidence submitted or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. So what they're saying behind the scenes is very different than what they said publicly. So yeah, I guess to wrap it up, my final thoughts are, it happened. We need to know more, and it's an ongoing story. Hopefully we find out more. All right. And thank you guys for listening. Until next time.
Keep it strange.